Welcome back to the Private Chef podcast. I'm your host, Hennche. In this episode, we dive into the captivating culinary journey of Chef Alex T. From her transition from comedy to cuisine to landing her dream food job and the influence of her acting background on her culinary career, we uncover the fascinating stories behind her success. Join us as Chef Alex shares her experiences, overcomes obstacles, and explores the future of food, offering valuable insights into the world of private chefs. Get ready for a delightful blend of entertainment and gastronomy. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you. What an intro.
Yeah, now you have to live up to that.
Oh,
No, I'm
God.
just kidding. You've already lived the life, so now it's going to be very organic. Where does your love for food come from?
My love for food comes from my family. My mother and my grandmother are both Italian, and I grew up in a house filled with food, and every memory is surrounded by food. I was lucky enough to be a kid in the 90s and got to watch Julia Childs and Jacques Pepin on PBS. And I was always drawn to cooking shows. And as Food Network came out and Emeril and Mario and Sarah Moulton and all of these chefs started coming out on television, Jamie Oliver, I would just watch that instead of cartoons. I was fascinated with the world of food. And I think it came from the love of food in my family that really sparked my love of food entertainment. I could watch it for hours. And it wasn't until I was about 12 that I decided that I was going to take a stab at cooking myself. I went to my mom. I had printed out some recipes from the Food Network website. And I said, I want to cook my brother his birthday meal. And it was the first meal I ever cooked. I made Emeril Lagasse's crab cakes. I did a leg of lamb, I think from Jamie Oliver, and then a Campari granita. And I was 12, I didn't know what Campari was, so I kept eating it, and I got completely drunk. But I just knew from that meal and watching people eat my food, I said, oh, this is something that's really special to me. And I think it was that moment that I knew that food was always going to be a part of my journey, no matter where I went in the world.
Nice, nice. And I think that it runs in Greek and Italian families, no, just like you said
Oh,
already.
yeah.
There's like a love for food and ingredients, and I had a couple different Italian chefs I spoke to, and they always kind of rooted back to the grandma or the mom and the love for food and bringing the family together at a big table, and there's so much emotion attached to the food.
100%. And I'm now in a position where I'm an adult now and I have a fiance and we have a family together. And now it's my turn to host my family at our house, which feels incredible. Like every Sunday we have people come over for workouts and big brunches. And then my mom will come over, my siblings will come over. And it's just I love being able to carry on that tradition for my family.
Nice. So what is one of the dishes that you love to put on the table for everybody that really makes
I
your
would
heart open?
say anytime I can put a big dish of pasta in front of people is always something that makes me very happy. But we just got this pizza oven, this wood fire pizza oven, and I've been doing everything from Thanksgiving dinner to pizzas to baking bread in it. I just can't get enough. So
Isn't it
um,
amazing? No,
it
like
is, it's,
if I could turn the camera, I can see it out the window here. We have one too, and we've been playing around with it like crazy. Just originally getting the heat right with the wood was a little bit of a
oh,
an
yeah.
experience, and but once you get the hang of it,
It's really so special. And I've always been drawn to live fire cooking. Even before I had this wood fired pizza kitchen oven, I we would be at the beach in New York with some friends, and I would just dig a hole in the sand, and I go let's grab some wood and a grate, and we're gonna cook here in the live fire. So we would put potatoes and squash inside the coals, and I would cook the
yeah.
chickens on the top. I don't. There's something really profound about cooking with live fire that I freaking love it.
No, I just spent the whole weekend doing that, literally. Like one of
Oh,
my clients got
it's,
really excited about Francis Malman,
oh
and
yeah,
they were like, they ordered like all kinds of beans, 5 days, and I'm like, okay, let's just get into it.
let's do it.
From Thursday to Sunday, we were just cooking up a storm on the open fires. It's I can totally relate to what you're saying. It was such an experience. I mean, I also felt pretty smoked afterwards, so I was very
Yeah.
happy when I
How do you
got a
smell
night.
now?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm good, but uh, I can totally relate to what you're saying. Like having the open flame and just dancing with the fire. It's really a dance
Mm.
with the elements because you just have to get the heat right, and it's like it's like such a process, but in a positive way.
Yes, and I feel like with chefs, the life source of what we do is fire. And
Yeah,
we normally have such control, whether you're in on a line in the kitchen or in a home, working as a private chef. Your kitchen, you pretty much have control over. You can turn knobs, turn the oven on. But when you're cooking with live fire, you're almost in a state of surrender and really at the mercy of the flame. And it for me, I find it incredibly exciting. And I know a lot of chefs do too, just because of the flavor and also the process that you go through when cooking. And when you can make a meal with live fire, it feels like such an accomplishment.
yeah. I The first day I told them don't invite 10 guests for the night yet because I don't know what we will eat.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
But then I was so happy, like besides one or two items that didn't turn out well, I wasn't too happy with the potatoes that tasted like an ashtray. But
Right.
but the rest, like all of the meat, the chicken came out super crispy and juicy. Like I was just having it dance right around the fire pit, and it was so much fun. Just like you said, you feel like 10 times more accomplished than doing it in the oven.
Right. There's a primal aspect to it as well. You can't get that rush anywhere else.
Yeah. So what did your early culinary days look like? How did you get started maybe on the more professional part of it after, getting a taste of it and the Campari on your brother's birthday?
I was a stand-up comedian and then trying to act. I grew up in Los Angeles. Both my parents were in the entertainment industry, and I always thought I was gonna be an actress, which I'm still very much pursuing that path. But the cooking world kind of took my career and went, no, you're gonna go this way. So I was doing stand-up comedy, and it's a very grueling business. You got to be out there grinding every night, two, three, trying to get on any microphone that you can. And I was really burnt out and I was not happy. And I found myself cooking most nights as a form of therapy before I would go out. And I found myself cooking most nights instead of going out. It was like that slow transition. I'm going to cook before and then I'll go out. And then it was like, I'm just going to stay in and cook. And I started putting on these dinners for friends. And I remember just feeling a profound sense of happiness. And I was feeling really lost in my career. I didn't know, what if I don't make it? What's my backup plan? I need to start figuring something out. I was 24, 25. Looking back now, I should have kept going, but I'm really glad that I decided to enroll in culinary school and just see where it would take me. And it just went like, boom, it just took off for me. I honed my skills in culinary school and then worked in a few kitchens, but it was interesting. I got a job offer, or I was living on my friend's couch, basically in her spare bedroom, while I was in culinary school, and she said she owned Pilates studios, and one of her trainers was training an actress on a movie set, and they were looking for a private chef for the family that was working on this movie. And she said, you should interview. If you're an amazing chef, you should just go for it. I'm not ready to do this. I'm not ready to run my own show. And she says, you do it like you do it naturally. You cook for everybody. Just give it a go. So I get wind that they had also fired like 4 chefs that week. It was like, one, you're done. One, you're done. I'm going to I'm going to humiliate myself. And I get there and I look at the cooking setup. It was in a tiny trailer with one little burner, no fridge. And they're like, we need breakfast, lunch, and dinner for at least 8 like high profile people. It's like, cool, cool, cool. I'm going to need a grill. And they're like, oh yeah, we can get you a grill. So they brought me a grill and I just cooked my heart out. I've never cooked as hard as I did. I got the job. I ended up working for these people for 2 years after the movie wrapped. And that's really how my career started. I may or may not have like fibbed a little bit in my interview saying I was already a professional chef, but they were so patient with me and they were so graceful. And I felt so lucky because I think a lot about the difference between working in a professional kitchen and then working in somebody's home is you really have to have a personality. You really have to get along with people and you really have to be in the business of making people feel good because you're working so intimately with them in their homes. I think you really have to have the personality to be able to work intimately with people in their homes. You have to be really, really patient, kind of have to swallow your pride and your ego and just work. And I think I learned so much. And from there, I just didn't stop working. It was every single day, somebody else needed something. And I had built this incredible roster of people here in Los Angeles. And it was at that point where I was kind of like, what's next? I've made some really good money. I want to expand my business. Where do I want to go? I started hosting cooking shows on YouTube with like this production company that basically was like a Food Network for YouTube. So I hosted a couple seasons there and I knew I want to do something in food entertainment. And all while still doing private chef stuff and catering on the side during my off seasons from the show. So that's kind of where my career started. And then 12 years later, I'm hosting this show called Moveable Feast, which I used to watch all the time. It's now in its 10th season. And it's always been split between different chefs. And now I'm the full-time host of it, which feels like the dream. And I get to travel all over the world and meet chefs, and we get to source the best ingredients, and we put on feasts, which is my favorite thing to do. Sorry, I'm very verbose. I'm a little long-winded.
No worries at all, because anyway, I want to get it out of you, so I just have to ask less questions. And I actually wanted to go here eventually anyway. So, the beauty of what you eventually got to do is travel the whole world, and be with those very exquisite and like highly skilled chefs. That must feel so rewarding. And the beauty of all of the careers I always listen to is just you could have never predicted that.
Never.
Could have never seen that coming, but it's so beautiful how you pursued it and you put your best effort behind it. And just like you said it, you cooked your heart out on that grill, on that set, which opened the doors. And I think it's that attitude and how you apply yourself to it that keeps taking you to another level each time.
There are a lot of downfalls, I think, that I have in my life. I'm not your typical human being. I'm a very quirky, a little off color kind of human. But one thing that I really pride myself on and that I am incredibly proud of is my work ethic. And I think that was instilled in me at a young age. In anything that I do, I always do to the best of my integrity. And I put in a lot of long hours and a lot of hard work to be able to get to where I am. And it's something that I can look back on. In the moment, I was always like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. But being able to be on the other side of it now and look back, it is the most invaluable free education that you can get, is just being thrown into the deep end, especially in the culinary world, whether you're being thrown onto a line or hosting dinners for private clients. If you put your head down and you do the work, you're going to come out the other side.
Yeah. And sometimes you might be one of those four chefs that get fired beforehand. And that's just like sometimes doors close and it just means like we weren't ready yet. And that's fine too. And then we skill up. We take our skill and our attitude to the next level and we give it another shot.
Exactly.
So what are you currently excited about? What are you currently working on that really fires you up?
We are about to leave to go shoot season 10 of Moveable Feast. I'm
Nice.
particularly excited about this season just because it's celebrating 10 years of the show. And also, we are going to be in 3 cities that are very dear to my heart. So, San Diego is where my sister lives. So, we're going to be shooting 2 episodes there. We're going up to Santa Barbara, which I have a lot of extended friends and family and spent a lot of time there. And then we're shooting 1 episode here at my home in Malibu. So we're featuring 2 chefs. One of them I worked side by side with for a lot of years. And he just opened a new restaurant here in Malibu. And then another woman who has been a wonderful friend and mentor to me. So I'm particularly excited about this season of the show. And then in general, I'm starting to do stand up again. So I'm opening for Whitney Cummings in the middle of my production. So I have a weekend off. I'm going to go do 3 shows with her down in Brea, California. Very excited about that as well.
Culinary is part of your life, but you're also multifaceted. So it's also interesting to hear that you're going back on stage as a comedian, because I think it's also interesting to see that some of us have these different facets and express themselves in something else. And I actually like that. There's some very dedicated chefs who are just like, okay, cook or die kind of thing. Actually, a friend of mine has that tattooed on his back
Wow.
with a chef's knife, and he's all about the kitchen. And then there's people like you and me who are doing different things. And I think what you said in the very beginning, how much rejection you have to go through to be a comedian, it's extremely humbling. And it's something I wasn't originally that aware of, how much rejection you have to experience and how what a craft it is to actually be funny on stage and kind of put together a somewhat predictable show that lands with people.
It's not an easy business, but I
Yeah.
always say the reward is the same feeling that you get when you serve somebody like an exquisite plate of food, something that you've poured your heart into. The joy that you can make people feel, whether you're telling them a joke or you're feeding them, I feel is the same thing. And that's the essence of what I'm trying to chase is joy and making people feel that.
So whether it's being in front of camera for a production on set, cooking, or comedy, and maybe it's all of them, where do you experience the most state of flow or joy?
That's a very good question, and one that my therapist asks me all the time. She's like, "Can you just pick a lane, please?" I'm like, I can't. I think it's different on different days. I find when I'm cooking, I am in my deepest flow state. It is something that comes effortless to me when I'm have ingredients in front of me. I just know what to do with them, and I'm in an unconscious flow state. When I'm on stage, I it is a it is work for me. Like I have to remember all my jokes and hit the timing, and like there's such a fear of, as you said, rejection if a
Yeah.
joke doesn't land, that I don't feel as in flow as I do in the kitchen. Not
Do you think that's because you have less experience? So, like in the kitchen, your ability to perform, your experience adds up to such a level that it can allow you to flow. And do you feel like maybe in comedy you haven't honed in the craft to that degree yet, where you still feel like you have to remember the lines in order to perform well, in order to land and not feel rejected?
Yes and no. I think that I have spent more hours in the kitchen than I have on stage, so that's definitely true. I think with me and the way that my brain works, when I perform, I don't think I'll ever get to the flow state that I am when I'm in the kitchen. It's just two different skill sets that one comes very easily, one's a little bit more work.
So then what makes you pursue comedy so hard at this stage? If you feel like you've already found something that puts you in such a deep state of joy and flow.
Because I think that there's more to me than just cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think just cooking for me is not going to make me happy. I need to be on stage. I need to make people laugh. And it's challenging, but I love the challenge. And um, yeah, I don't think I would be content in life just cooking. And I admire people that can do that because my life would be a lot easier.
I think a lot of people sometimes look at people that have a simpler version of it and they just look joyful with whatever they have.
Mm.
I come from a small town in Germany, and sometimes I look back at old classmates and I'm like, wow, they still live in the same house, they still do the same job, they seem pretty joyful.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
meantime, I do all this fuss around the world, flying back and forth, and I'm like,
It's just, it's everybody's got their own life path. And I, the people that are in the kitchen every single day, I am like in awe of them because their passion is something that I don't think that it's something that I want to be able to have. Like I want to be able to stay in the kitchen every day. I just my mind is pulling me other places.
I think that's very true for many of us. The mind is a wild waterfall for most of us.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, what have been some of like the steps in your career where you felt very challenged in the culinary world beyond, for example, that experience you had on the set where after that you worked with the family for 2 years and what were some of the experience where you felt like you had to level up, find uh, a new level within yourself to live up to what you were going for?
So I consulted for a restaurant in 2016 called Great White down in Venice. And that was the first time I was put in a position of authority in a professional kitchen. And that was extremely challenging because I knew how to run a kitchen
Hmm.
in a home. I knew how to run a catering team. Um, but doing it where you're not sweeping at the end of the night and closing up and, walking away. You're sweeping up, locking up, and getting up at 5 in the morning and opening up again. And I mean, it's a baby that doesn't ever grow up. You're constantly tending to it. That was extremely challenging for me. I learned a lot. Um, and that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my culinary career was opening a restaurant. The kitchen was super small. We were trying to figure out, like, we were doing so much more volume than we could handle. And it was a new team, a new kitchen, like everything was just, we started from the ground up. And I'm so proud of what we built there in the beginning. And the owners of the restaurants have just taken it and not franchised it. They've opened up more locations around Los
Yeah.
Angeles that really become an institution here. And beautiful, beautiful dining establishments and great food. The menu's since evolved, but I think opening that first one was like a huge sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Such an interesting process to bring it together from like an early phase, conceptualize it, and then bring the menu together and bring the team together, which can be very challenging these days to find a team that jives and can actually execute on the vision. that as well the owner as yourself developed together?
Yes, that I found incredibly challenging.
Yeah,
So you were a Michelin star chef, and then how did you make the
but
transition?
I didn't have a Michelin star in my own name, but I was working in Michelin star kitchens. Just want to
Okay,
clarify that one.
sorry. When did you make the transition from commercial kitchens to private work?
Almost 10 years ago. But I did do some consulting in between, and I transitioned for two reasons. One was pay, and one was quality of life. Because I was working in three different Michelin star restaurants, two in Europe, and then one in the United States here in New York called, uh, and um, and the pay was just so ridiculously low, and living in New York was really not fun. And obviously, there's different levels to it. Eventually, you can become a head chef or an executive chef in one of those establishments, and they take care of you really well because you run the show and you run the revenue for them. And but it never seemed very desirable. Like I always looked ahead of myself in my career, and whether it was the patron of the restaurant or the executive chef, I never saw myself in their shoes. Like because I saw all the patrons not being happy with the entertaining that they have to do with the general public. Whether the two owners in Europe or here, they were all like, they didn't necessarily appreciate that part of what they had to do to keep the brand alive, and they didn't seem joyful and fulfilled to me, and neither did the majority of the executive chefs that I worked with. So I was like, okay, you guys not really showing me something desirable here. And that's when I started working with private individuals, which kind of happened by coincidence. One of my friends was like, hey, I have this private birthday party at this executive's house. It was like a bachelor penthouse in New York City, something I've never seen on that level. I was like, okay, this is different. I don't live like that. And we were making a very intimate birthday party dinner. And I was like, okay, there's a different world here. And what I enjoyed so much about that experience was the appreciation I earned that night for the food we served. Yeah, I'm executing on the same skill set, but because I'm doing it in front of people and kind of also partially serving them, the level of appreciation or recognition for the meal was completely different. Like something that we have no exposure to in the professional kitchen.
Right.
Like when I was working at Danielle, occasionally maybe some of the guests would come in the kitchen, we might take a picture with them, but we were in our head, we were already on the next plate or still worried about whatever has to happen next. It wasn't like we can actually take it in as such, despite them maybe being very thankful for making a special occasion for them more special. But at the end of the day, there was always this tension in the entire environment. And then I also just learned simple facts, like there's a German insurance statistic that a head chef or a chef in Germany dies at the average age of 57.
No way. Well, that makes sense.
So it's somewhere between stress, tension, bad food habits, everything that comes along with it. So kind of around all of that, I was like, I think it's time for change.
Yeah. There's a difference between what you just said. There's a difference between feeding people and forgetting to nourish yourself that comes with the territory of being a chef, especially a commercial chef. It's like you're dealing with nourishing other people and feeding them, but it's like you don't get to feed yourself. And it comes from a lot of chefs, they just burn out so easily. So I relate to that very much.
Yeah, and the more I got to know in different environments, I started in a very cruel kitchen in Germany. It was very gut wrenching to work in there. Uh, they 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 were going through stuff like nothing else. It was insane. Most people wouldn't last for weeks or months. And then I moved on, and the environments kind of softened a little bit. Then I figured the New York labor laws are a little bit more strict. So here it actually got more pleasant than in Europe. And then I learned there's just different ways to go about that. And you don't have to go in this old school path where people scream at you all day long, and where there's a different sense of appreciation for the skill set and, putting your heart behind something.
Right. I found being a private chef, just as you said, the level of appreciation and being able to go out after the meal and see what your creation has made people feel is incredibly rewarding and very powerful.
Yeah. And one thing I also learned is not every house, not every family is for me. Like I've in the early stage, we sometimes we try to please because we want the position or we need the paycheck or we want the experience. But eventually I learned, there's families that naturally appreciate what I naturally like to do, and that's like a match made in heaven. Compared to there's some family who seem to be eternally ungrateful, and I try
I've
to
met
avoid
them.
those. Yeah. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about what those experiences are like for you.
I have a very specific cooking style. It's very casual, California, lots of fresh produce from the farmer's market. I love serving family style. Like what I do on the show is exactly how I cooked in real life and for my private clients. And I had a lot of people who really appreciated that style of cooking. And then there was just some who wanted more refined. I could do it, but it didn't make me very happy. And I think that it translated to the plate, and I just wasn't in that flow the way that I am when I'm cooking the food that I love to cook. I also, I learned in my early 20s that I could heal my body with food, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and cooking with really clean ingredients and fresh and organic didn't really translate to that fine dining, lots of sauces, lots of butter, that kind of thing, where some of the clients really wanted that style of food. I just couldn't deliver on it just because
Yeah,
I didn't want to.
it's not where the heart is.
No, and it's funny because I have a roster of really amazing, everybody's like, oh, you cook for celebrities. How is that? Are they the rudest people ever? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they're actually the kindest. I got to work for really kind, really appreciative, huge, big celebrities. And it's the people that were wealthy that wanted this status or whatever, that were excuse my language, they were assholes. And they had the bad attitudes and they were really ungrateful, never could be happy. It was never a good thing. I'm so grateful for the clients that I had over the years, because I felt like I went to work happy every day.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that. I had very similar experience, and I was surprised about the different quality. And it just makes sense. I mean, there's different people out there, but the different quality of human beings. And I'm working with a family right now, and they're just adorable. They the way they interact with each other makes me happy to work for them, with them, and I can see that they appreciate this stuff. All of them make a point. They really don't have to, but they always make a point of saying hi and bye and thank you, and they're all of those small things that they do on a regular basis, where you can just appreciation carries in the air,
I think that's any sort of work environment that where that is the case, is it just makes for a happier life all around. Like you can go, it's a beautiful lesson to be able to go through the world, be happy, connect with people. It's a ripple effect. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that. And it just, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you get it.
Yeah, it's the ripple effect. It's everything we do ripples into society. It's like
Mm,
you throw a pebble in the pond. It's not just one little ripple, it ripples and it carries so much further than we would ever think.
totally.
Yeah. So what is one of the things that you would give a young and striving up and coming chef who maybe wants to work in the private industry? What would you give them on their way?
I would say always go into somebody's home if you are to go into somebody's home with the mentality that you're there to work. You're not there to be their friend. If they want to be your friend, great, but always go in with a good attitude. Always have a smile on your face no matter the day that you're having, because it sets the tone for the rest of the house. I always treated my clients' homes as if it were my own home, in the sense of not being like, oh, I'm going to throw my shit everywhere. But if I had somebody coming into my home, this is how exactly like I would want them to work and cook in my home. Like I showed that same respect to every single one of my clients. I always made sure I left their kitchens impeccably clean, and everything put back. And then I would always go like one step beyond. Like if their pantries were a mess, I would come in and go, I would ask them like, hey, do you want me to organize your pantry for you? Or can I reorganize your pots for you? And 9 times out of 10, they would say, yes, please. I've been meaning to do that, but I don't know how to, or I don't have time, or whatever. And I think going above and beyond your job description and being helpful to the clients in other ways always leaves a good impression, and makes them want to keep using you time and time again. I will say this as women, and this is just a thing as a female chef, going into a home where there is husband and wife, I always make sure that I make the wife the priority, the point of contact, and really am respectful of relationship dynamics, just because I think as females going into a home, you just have to really draw those boundaries, and really show the female clients your attention.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. It just
Yeah.
doesn't leave any room for misunderstandings if you go about it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you so much
You're so
for
welcome.
all your insights, and I feel like we eventually have to do a round 2 of this.
I would love to do round 2.
Yeah,
I'm not done talking to you yet.
yeah, I feel the same way.
Well, it was a pleasure to sit down and share a little bit about my story, and I look forward to speaking to you again.